Hello, collective. All right, I'm on day, feels like 4. I'm on day 2 of no air conditioning. Uh, Fortunately, it's in in the low 80s. It's been kind of cloudy. However, it's been very humid because rain is coming. The rain gonna come, so that's kind of tempering me there, right? Because although I'm really welcoming the cold showers. If you don't know what I'm talking about, this is Temperance, the first of the major arcana readings that I did. That was part of the practical challenge, was to work on our self-regulation, and you can do that by turning off your heat, your AC, taking cold showers instead of warm or hot showers, like removing things that make you feel comfortable. All right, now the Hermit came up in that Temperance reading, so these two are quite connected. They're all connected, of course, but the energy of the collective that's going through the Hermit energy and the collective that's going through Temperance energy, they're probably very linked in their challenges, right? You could be a Virgo, you could be a Sagittarius, you could be a mutable sign, right? But going through that mutable energy, there's also fire and earth, right? So it's trying to keep enough kindling, keeping that balance of the masculine and the feminine, because earth is feminine, fire is masculine, air is also masculine, and water is feminine, right? So when you're trying to stoke that fire or cool that fire, that's a way to work with that mutable energy, because mutable energy is air and water, right? It's the current, it's the stuff that you can't see. And so it's, there's like birds and fish, right? They are kind of ruled by the current. So mutable energy, the challenge with mutable energy, there's a lot of them, but it's that balance of the masculine and feminine, knowing when to go, knowing when to stay, right? Because cardinal energy is fire, that's the leader. Then fixed energy is the more decisive, can tend to be more stubborn, but it's that fixed earth energy, right? So it can become, I'm a fixed sign, so I can talk about us like that, because I know. And so the Hermit, which is the major arcana for Virgo, is a perfectionist, and so they really struggle with, and those going through that energy really struggle with launching things or being the fool or taking that leap of faith, because faith is imperfect, it's unconditional, and the Hermit, right, can be quite conditional. Now the benefit of the Hermit, which is very helpful for the spirit and helpful to tap into that unconditional energy, is the fact that you kind of you go through a Queen of Swords kind of energy, and you're a lot of air energy, right? You use that air faction of your modality to cut everything out that doesn't serve you. And so the Hermit is typically, right, by definition, a hermit. They're doing it alone, they're in isolation, and so that can be a nice place, right? Initially it's a struggle, it's very heartbreaking to cut things out, and you deal with any kind of attachments, but mutable energy doesn't typically lock onto attachments like fixed energy would, right? And so they can be very affected, and they can feel very victimized, and things can feel very unfair to them because they're constantly ruled by the current. They're very influenced by things that are happening around them, and so they can become very affected. And so they can, I mean, the beauty of a mutable modality is that they are quite accommodating and acclimating, right? They can kind of blend in. They can sort of, if they get into a higher vibration of that modality, they can really sort of blend into any environment, right? They can, they're like a chameleon, an energetic chameleon, because they've taken that time to observe, right? That's that going into that isolation mode. Hermits, Virgos, that energy is very observant. It's very analytical, right? And it gets into a place when you're in that swords energy where you've cut things out, you're like a wallflower, right? You're just observing the things happening around you. You're intellectualizing them. You're not in that water energy of your modality to, you're not as emotionally affected, right? And so when you get, because that's usually influenced by things happening around you, right? So you kind of go into your head, you go into a more masculine energy to cut everything out, to be very active in the pursuit of isolation. And then when you come into that isolation, you're in that feminine energy. And that can often take years or decades, or it can happen almost overnight, right? You can kind of, something can happen. We just covered the tower yesterday. So something can come into your life that makes you have to cut everything out. And then you're really in this isolation mode, and that can be very jarring because you've gone from this masculine energy of analyzing and not being in your emotions and not really facing your emotions, because when you do, that's where you start to feel like a victim. That's where you start to feel affected. That's where you start to feel unworthy, imperfect, and that can be very, the external will really validate that oftentimes, right? Because that's what the external does. The external being that demonic, lower vibration, vampiric, parasitic type energy that tries to come in. It will kind of seep right into your core and into your shadows and anything that you haven't faced. So when you go into hermit mode, that's the inventory. That's where you have to be kind of really, not kind of, you have to be very honest with yourself. You're very confronting. And it is a confrontational, kind of jarring experience to go into that place initially. Now, that's the knowing when to stay. That can be very uncomfortable, right? Because you have to go in, you have to face all that stuff, you have to get into that yin energy, your water feminine energy, and nurture things about yourself that are very, that have been neglected, abused, antagonized by the external for so long. So cutting it out initially can be very upsetting to your balance. That can feel like a tower, and then coming within can also feel like a tower because you're facing all these shadows. You're, the Hermit and the Rider-Waite Tarot, they've got this lantern, right? They're within, and they're shining a little light through the kind of cave system of their own underworld, right? We have our own hell and our own underworld within, and our own heaven and upper world within. A higher self, a lower self, shadows and light aspects, right? So, and they're all beneficial. We have the ego and the intuition, and I'm going to do a whole separate video on ego and intuition, so I'm going to try and keep these as concise as possible. I say that, and then they end up being an hour, but truly I want to, because I have everything closed up because they're doing work outside and the dogs are going to be going crazy if I have the windows and everything open, but I want to open those windows soon. So that, now the challenge of the hermit mode, there's the challenge going into it, and then when you get into it, you kind of get in that isolation. Now when you're single, right, if you've been single for a long time, because my readings are for single individuals, if you're in a partnership, what are you doing here? If you have to ask questions and you have to resource tarot to ask about your partnership, that's probably a red flag. That's probably, if you have to make, if you have to make a pros and cons list, that's a con. Anyway, I feel like somebody needs to maybe hear that. But these are for the divine union readings, which is what my primary focus is, because that's where we really we come into that divine masculine and feminine balance, and then we are able to really shift the collective. We're really able to come into that tantric weave of divine power, right? And that charges both of the individuals, and then they can individually become two can become one. So it's like the individuals have to charge themselves, but then they come into a place where it's like another level of charging, another level of power that's unique from anything else that you've ever seen or felt. All right, so if you've been single for a long time, I'm going to get off of that and get back into, if you've been single for a long time, or you've been in isolation for a long time, which you've probably been single, the two are intertwined, that rhymes, then that can become very comforting, right? You're not antagonized by other people. You're doing exactly what you want. You don't have to ask anybody else's opinion. You're not influenced by other people. The only current that you're following is your own. Your only path that you're on is your own. So that can feel very comforting, and then you can get to a place where you're like, this is great. And the idea of inviting somebody else in can be, that's a new tower for you, right? Because it's like you're going to be taking that leap of faith, and you're going to be expanding in another way where you're going to be, right, you've sort of, when you were expanded before, right, when you were open and receptive before, you got wounded. You got sort of Three of Swords energy, which we don't have here, but this Hermit in this deck looks like they've had a few Three of Swords. Five of Swords, you've been stabbed in the back, you've been deceived, you've been lied to, loyalty was broken, and expectations were disappointed. And so you had to come in and make new standards, right? So that feels very good, because it's like you can feel very sure of yourself when you come into that place where you're not being confronted by that last time you were expanded, right? It felt like you were expanded because you were open, but you were also very vulnerable, which isn't a bad place to be in. But if you are in that place without discernment, right, without the nurturing, without having faced your shadows and done that work, you're going to attract things that validate your shadows, that validate those lower vibrations, and it's going to make you feel that hurt and that deception over and over again, right? So when you contract and you come into this place where you're in this hermit mode, you're reclusive, you're isolated, you're alone, but you're not lonely, right? You could be struggling with loneliness. I mean, that's part of the struggle, but when you hit that place of being alone but not feeling lonely, that's when you know it's time, okay? So if you're still struggling with loneliness, it's not time. If you are like counting the days that you've been single, you haven't been single long enough, right? It's kind of, you need to get to a place where you feel not affected by the past, and not that you're impervious to it, right? Because you still want to take that information, you still want to take those lessons from when you were affected. Affected meaning victimized, right? So you don't want to be in a victim mentality where you're holding on to anything from the past. So there needs to be a death, there needs to be a releasing of those things, and a forgiveness of self, right? Where you have acknowledged that there's accountability, right? That's the going in and doing the inventory, right? You're accountable for the fact that you played a role in that, right? Whether you wanted to admit it or not, we always play a role in the things that affect us and the things that hurt us, except when we were children, right? But that's what the cycle breakers are doing. They're breaking the cycle of that time when we were truly victims, when we were victims of our circumstances, to now where we have the divine ability to break that cycle and not be a victim anymore and become a victor of our circumstances, right? We remother ourselves, we refather ourselves, we become the guardians that we never had, and that way we can guide ourselves, we can lead ourselves and nurture ourselves into a place of divine balance. And that way when we are open again, when we expand again and we are receptive to what's on our now current vibration, we are we're ready to fight. No, we are only going to attract things that, well, I don't want to say only, because no matter what, you're always going to attract, the demonic energies are always going to try and creep in, right? Especially when you are expanding and you're working old muscles. It's like when you sweat, right? When you sweat, there's a purification. You're getting old stuff out. But when you work out and you move muscles, right, it can be, and maybe you are moving your body, right? If you're doing yoga, if you're doing dance, if you're doing any kind of like classes or anything like that, you may find, like Kundalini yoga, you may find that you're accessing parts of yourself that feel that vulnerability. And so, people who start to get healthy, when they start to clean up their diet, when they go through sobriety, when they start to hit the gym again, right? When you start to heal yourself and actively heal yourself, actively do things that make you more balanced, right? For children of chaos, like what I was talking about before, and you know who you are, it's probably everyone that's 16 on the clock, which is 5, which is 10, or I'm sorry, that's 14, which is 5. That's the lack mentality, right? So if you're coming from a place of lack and chaos, peace and balance can be like your greatest antagonist. It feels like the villain in your story, because it's like, this is unfamiliar territory. I don't even know what this feels like. I don't even know what a healthy partnership feels like or looks like. And so when you expand again, it's going to be extra vulnerable, and so you will be working old muscles and opening things up, and you might find yourself feeling very emotional and maybe breaking down for no reason, right? There is a reason. You just have to listen to your body, right? But if you have a blockage in one of your chakras and you start to move that and unblock it, all that trapped energy has to go somewhere, right? You're going to sweat it out. You're going to cry it out. Like, your body is going to weep it out. And so you may be feeling, and that can come out if crying, right, and accessing that water and that emotional energy is foreign to you, right? If you've had to block that to protect yourself for so long, then it might come out in different ways, right? It might come out in like lashing out, anger, right? Because that hurt's going to come out in some way. Those shadows, those, not shadows as much, but the fractures in your ego that were imposed upon you by the false guardians that you were introduced into this incarnation under, and society sense and lovers sense and friendships and work environment, like everything has been reinstating that low self-worth or that neglect or that abuse or that deception. It's going to come out. You're going to have to, when you're in your safe bubble, it's fine. You're not going to be affected by anything, right? You're going to be safe. You're going to be in your space. It's very controlled, right? But when you open again, you're not going to have control over it. And it's going to be unconditional again, right? So when things are unconditional, that means that they are open to everything. And that's a very vulnerable place. Now you've gained discernment because you've created this space for yourself, and you know, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, this is what serves me, this is what doesn't, right? You know all of that. But when you open up to kind of everything, because the peace is unfamiliar, because balance is unfamiliar, because balance isn't in this space. This is conditional. Balance is only in an unconditional space, right? It's like a surfer, right? You can't control the current. So certain drafts are going to come through your window. Certain currents are going to hit your emotions, right? As you open up and you move these parts of your body and you move these parts of your mind, and you allow the spirit to come in, that unconditional energy is going to come in, and it's going to feel very uncomfortable, right? But that's what temperance is. It's finding comfort in the discomfort. So it's holding yourself accountable for the things, the standards that you set, not accepting any less, right? And the only way that you can do that is to constantly take new inventory and check in with your body, check in with your mind, check in with your ego, so that those shadows don't take over again, right? And they don't lead the way. So, wow. There's dripping water everywhere. Yeah, and so yeah, maybe you need to drink water, but that's another thing as well with circulation. It's like with water, you're moving your body, you're circulating. And I think it's funny because if you are a Virgo, I thought about this. This background is probably just driving you fucking crazy because it's not perfect. I just pulled everything out of my closet, right? Because I'm doing another inventory and another purge because I'm taking my own advice, which is always fun, right? So that's part of it. When you're excavating and when you're going into unfamiliar territory and you have to do this re-inventory process, it feels so constant, but it's not a perfect process, because each time that you pull everything out of the closet and you reevaluate your shadows, they're going to look different because you've had different experiences, and the last time that you looked at them, your wants have changed, your desires have changed, you've grown. So the things that you stuffed in there that you're like, I might need that later, you're going to look at them again and go, I don't really know why I kept that because I don't need that. I don't need that now. It's been in this closet for this long and I haven't needed it thus far. So with minimalism, with purging, with the root chakra, right? Like eliminating things. That's that death, right? Elimination. It's very cleansing. It feels very good, but it's also going through. It can be very exhausting, right? So it's like, yeah, it can be very exhausting and draining. I don't know where I was going with that, but we'll get back. We'll get back to the cards, and then we'll maybe find our way back there. But yeah, maybe you're going through stuff where you're like accessing old projects that you wanted to access, like painting this door and rehanging it. So like maybe there's some, like if you've been in your space for so long, right, you might be really ready to get out of that space. You could also feel like, okay, I'm done with this fucking environment. I'm ready for something new. That's the place where you're like, you want out and you want something new, but that's the trick of the balancing that, right, with the temperance, and with the tower, is if you don't hold yourself accountable for the things that you said, the standards that you set, you might be accepting lower vibration because you're just in a hurry to get something new. You might be cluttering your space because you're just buying things, you're just sort of like filling this space, and that's with sobriety. Whenever you eliminate one thing that's toxic or low vibration, we often compensate with something else. So just maybe watch what you're compensating with, because the things that you invite into your life when you come out of hermit mode are very important. And you may have to contract again, right? Maybe you expanded a little bit. Maybe you were starting to date again. Maybe you were applying for new jobs or like trying to get out into the world again. And if you've really gotten to like a intense hermit mode, right? Maybe you were truly a hermit. You weren't even leaving the house. You could have got some kind of agoraphobia, right? You could have gotten your social anxiety could have increased a lot, right? So these things could be muscles that you're wanting to exercise again, but understand that you may expand and then have to contract again, right? It's not necessarily like I've come in and now I'm out and everything's good and I've learned everything. Like, it's going to be a constant process. That's the balance. Knowing when to stay, knowing when to go. And that's not finite. It doesn't just happen once. It happens. If you're a hypersensitive person, a highly sensitive person, I don't want to say hypersensitive because that typically has a pejorative context, but if you are a highly sensitive person, you're empathic, right? You're going to be influenced, you're going to be very sensitive and empathically influenced by the energies around you even more so. So it might be a daily occurrence of knowing when to go and knowing when to stay, right? Maybe just running errands is like exhausting, and then you come home and you just need to like decompress. And that's very Virgoian energy, right? All right, so with this Virgo, with this Hermit, we have the Ace of Pentacles. All right, so this is a new endeavor with work, with stability, with health and wealth, right? Pentacles are health and wealth. This is the physical world. This is also the earth energy of you, right? Of the Hermit energy of Virgo, right? They are an earth sign. Jesus Christ. This is working on your health and your wealth. This is working on the physical body. So this is getting into the gym. This is moving your body. This is working on your physical world, right? Maybe you were indulging. Maybe you were paying for things to get delivered to your door. Maybe you were online shopping a lot, right? And now, so if you're going to be kind of expanding and getting out of that space, you may have spent a lot of money doing that, right? So now you're sort of coming into a new place of like budgeting and balancing your finances. I don't know why I said it like that. The finances. Maybe you're Italian. And then you're also balancing your space, right? So your body and your home, right? Your dwelling places. These are the dwelling places for your energy. So this is really, they're mirrors of each other, right? If you've got things going on in your house, they're going on in your body. If you have things going on in your body, you're going to see them in your house, right? If you're a homeowner, you probably know this. And they typically come in threes, right? It's like, it seems like there's always something going on. This is really paying attention to your physical environment, your immediate physical environment, right? And then you can expand that out, but you can't, if you expand in a place of conditional self-love or conditional thoughts, belief systems, any sort of conditional energy, that's what you're going to attract. You're going to attract those same things back to you, right? So this is really being cautious of, right, like if you don't like the way that you look or feel and you're feeling unhealthy and you're not eating well, that's not a place that you want to expand and try and attract a new partner in, right? You want to make sure that you feel good about yourself. You want to make sure that you feel whole and you feel spherical and you feel balanced before you invite somebody new into your life, before you invite new energy into your life, right? So this is this goes into every place that you put your money, and this is just a physical representation of energy. So every place that you put your energy, this is paying attention to that. So there is new energy coming in. That's what the Hermit is shining light on, right? Okay, what do I want this new world to look like? What do I want this new energy to come in, this new me, this new reality that I've created, right? In your bubble, you've probably been imagining and fantasizing and idealizing, right? Your polarity is Pisces, the Hermit, right? They're very idealistic, very romantic, so they're always dealing with each other, right? Polar signs are always dealing with each other, it feels like. But you could be in that place, and that's water energy, right? That's getting into the water aspect of your mutable energy. So that's feeling the flow, feeling your circulation, which comes from the heart. So that's listening to your heart. And that's with the Eight of Cups here, that's a new emotional path, right? And see, their back is turned to everything behind them. That's leaving everything behind. That's the death behind them. And this is kind of, and see how they're leaving each other, they're back to back, right? This Hermit is looking for something new, and they've turned their back to everything. 8 is the number of cycles, it's the number of infinity, right? You could have Leo in your chart, you could be dealing with the Leo, right, with strength. That's the symbol for strength, is the infinity symbol, but it's 8, which is the cycle, right? This is releasing an old cycle, releasing an old self, an old thought pattern, belief system. That's a belief system about yourself, right? Affirmations, how you think of yourself, how you think of your home, how you think of your environment and your environment, right? That's expressing gratitude, right, for what you do have. And I just heard a song today. I'll have to find out what it is, because I don't know, but it was on a Khruangbin playlist, right? And it was, the lyrics were something, I'm paraphrasing, but it was, you don't, oh, it's just left me. It'll come back. And if not, I'll find it and put it in the, I'll comment it below if I remember. But it was about having gratitude, or being thankful for what you have. It was very soulful. I really enjoyed it. Well, that's not helpful for you. But yes, expressing gratitude, being thankful for what you have, and not, oh, it said you might not have a car. You might not drive a pink Cadillac. You might not have a car at all. But you can still stand tall. Be thankful for what you've got. Something like that. Those are generally lyrics. So, yeah, maybe you don't have a vehicle. Maybe you haven't been driving because you've been in hermit mode. Maybe you're or yeah, just with the Chariot. That's also Cancerian energy. Leading with the heart space, following your heart and leading with the heart. And so here again, this is a lot of water energy. You've got Scorpio, which is a water sign. It's fixed sign. So this is feminine energy. This is getting into feminine energy to end everything that left you behind. So it's like when you went into hermit mode, it's like you went into the swords energy. You went into masculine energy to cut everything out. But now it's like you're leaving all of that behind from a yin place. So it's less, yin is not as active, right? It's knowing when to stay, and not necessarily stay in your bubble, but to stay with what you've learned, right? To listen to yourself. It's very nurturing. It's feminine. It comes into a feminine aspect of nurturing yourself. Whereas the other thing, the swords energy may have been like a reaction, like, fuck everybody. I don't want to talk to you. I'm like half-baked. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. You're cool. This is that moment where you're going, this time when you expand, you're coming into that opposite, that kind of polarity sign, polarity aspect of your mutable modality. Tongue twisters. Maybe you're selling seashells by the seashore as well. Maybe your name is Sally. Actually, I saw the name Sally on something on my walk earlier today. My moving meditation. Anyway, so maybe your name is Sally. Anyway, so it's like you're coming out of that air aspect and more into the water aspect of your modality, so that you know how to blend into the environment around you, how to exist, how to cohabitate, right? How to coexist and that, like, if you're going to be living with somebody again, right? If you've been living in isolation by yourself for a long time and you're meeting somebody new and you guys want to move in together, there's going to be a lot of things like that can conflict with that, right? And if you get into a perfectionist energy, if you get into a swords energy, a very masculine energy, you might try to be conditional or right, like be very precise with how things should go. But listening to your heart when he's calling for you, maybe this is the divine feminine that I'm talking to, and the divine masculine is going to be calling you, which the divine masculine should call you. That's the masculine pursues. But this is a lot of feminine energy. This is getting into a feminine energy, listening to yourself. Now, death and destruction is also a masculine energy, right? So the sign of Scorpio is feminine. It's fixed water, both earth and water. That's very feminine, but death itself is, creation is feminine, and death is masculine, but there is a duality and a polarity in both, right? Destruction can be very masculine, because it's active, right? It's active to end something. But this is like you're ending something in a feminine way. You're using the feminine aspect of something that you've done in a masculine way before, in a feminine way. I think I've just repeated that multiple times. So I think that's just about how I'm going to say it. But see, this person's terrified. I feel like you're just, this has been terrifying, the idea of like getting into a new relationship, right? You were probably divorced, went through a terrible breakup, just in a cycle of really low vibrational people, right? And see this moon, see how this moon kind of looks like, get a clue, right? The moon's kind of like, you didn't listen to your heart, right? So this is you listening to your heart, but your heart space is very guarded, right? So Hermit is can be very fear-based. So you want to come into this place of, and also with the Tower, which is also Scorpionic energy, which is the reading I did yesterday. They had the Hermit. The Hermit came out with that. Is that a lie? That might be a lie. I don't know if Hermit came out. I don't think a Hermit came out. No, it came out in Temperance. But there was a fear of coming out and a need to be confident, to align the chakras, right? So I feel like you've had a block in the heart space. That's Leo energy. That's strength, right? So there's a strength in this feminine energy. There's a strength in feelings, right? Your feelings were probably negated. You probably felt very snuffed out with your feelings. They didn't matter. Things were very unfair growing up, and then you just attracted that to confirm that lie later, because that's what we do. We confirm what we know. So then we are always right, because as just terrestrial beings, we like to be right. We like to be right. So this is like, in that Tower reading, there was a need to kind of stand tall, like those lyrics, stand tall and keep to work those muscles that have been laxed, latent. They've been sort of, there's like a physical, energetic impotence here, right? Where you're coming out, you're invigorating. Maybe something with ED that's very specific, but yeah, but essentially what ED is like, it's a fracture in the sacral chakra, which is Scorpionic energy, which is sexual energy. Our sexual energy and our creative energy comes from the same place, right? So that creative feminine energy coming out into something new, coming into a coexistence with somebody, a co-inhabitance with somebody. I really feel like you're going to be moving in with somebody pretty soon, right? In divine timing, so whatever that means for you, wherever you feel like you fall into this. But once you do expand in a balanced way and you are aligned and you feel balanced and you've worked those muscles again of standing tall, right? Your true core. Not, trying to get a six-pack, but your true core, the things that hold your spinal column, that hold your divine channel upright. So everything is flowing, the information from source is coming in to the root, and you're from the crown to the ground, you're constantly feeling that channel of that ethereal energy coming to your terrestrial body. And so they're standing tall, power stances. So, building your confidence, and with confidence, right? And because the Hermit and, I almost said Taurus, Virgo can be such a perfectionist, you're very hard on yourself, and you um, when it comes to trusting, unconditional energy, source energy, divine energy is all about trust, right? And that's temperance, it's patience, it's trust, it's the Fool, it's taking that leap of faith. And that takes grace, which was talked about in the Tower reading yesterday. It takes grace, it takes, and grace takes gratitude, right? Which is about self-affirming, cutting yourself some slack, and giving yourself little wins, right? So a practical application of that could be making a to-do list, right? Making a very, like, everything that you've done versus everything that you want to do, right? Because everything that you want to do leaves space, leaves room. I want to say, like that movie Room, where they're boxed in, they're like prisoners of a room. Versus space, which is like expansive, it's spherical, it continues to expand, but it's left room for that feelings of failure, feelings of imperfection, feelings of lack, that 5 energy, that and you bring that to an end with scorpionic energy, right? You kind of have to be active about allowing grace in, right? So you have to make space instead of room. And that's part of this, like going through, doing the inventory of your physical space, purging things out, minimizing the clutter in the mind, because when the mind is cluttered, then the body is cluttered, and then you can't hear, the body can't receive the messages from source, right? When the mind is cluttered, then the senses are cluttered, right? You're aggravated in your senses, right? You're aggravated in your 5 senses. So if you're feeling lack, inventory your senses. Go into the 5, right? What's bothering my ego? What's bothering? There's too much physical, visual clutter. There's too much audible clutter, right? Too many influencing voices. Too much, social nonsense, lies, media. There's too much going on around me. Too many noises, right? Too many noises going on. And then, like what are you touching, right? What clothes are you wearing? What fabrics are you putting on your body? What are you sleeping in, right? So making your space that you live in, the room that you live in, this physical house or structure that you live in, comfortable, right? Make it comfort. That's very feminine, right? You want to comfort the senses. So that's, touch. What are you eating, right? I feel like you're eating things that are just not good for you. So making better choices, using discernment, that you're not putting things into your body that are going to disrupt your balance, that are not going to disrupt your channel, right? So this is very purifying your temple. Because if you don't purify your temple, it's going to turn into a tower and it's going to crumble. And so there's a need to get into a place where it's comforting, because if your 5 senses are bothered and like this, if you're in this fear-based place, if you're closed off, if your chakras are all crunched in on each other and blocked, right? What happens when you have a blockage in pipes, in plumbing? You get backflow, you get overflow, pipes break, things flood, it becomes a problem. So if you don't control that, right? If you're going to be in this controlling energy, you can't control the external, but you can control the internal. So mind over matter, quiet your mind, and you can do that by accessing the 5 senses so that you can access the 6th sense, right? And beyond. As Leon Bridges, and beyond. Which is a great song. Very soulful. I feel like, you may be listening to very soulful music, very calming music with warm voices, right? Listening to things that soothe you, eating things that soothe you, right? Yin foods, right? Cooling foods, not a lot of cooked foods, right? Maybe getting a lot of those cooked foods out of your diet, eating fresh foods, living foods, fruits, raw vegetables, things with high water content, things that are very cooling. I mean, you can get iced coffee, but caffeine is going to be very dehydrating, right? I feel like you need to hydrate yourself, purify your temple, and make yourself feel like a sacred space in a very yin space. And what's the other one? So we've got physical. Clean up your space. Like, clean it up. You don't need it. It's not serving you. Get it out of there. Have a garage sale. Put it on Facebook Marketplace, or just like put it on the curb and let people pick at it, right? And just get that energy out of your house, right? Except for intimates. This is very specific, but as far as spellcraft, witchcraft, I always would suggest, if there are intimate things, right? Intimate clothing, hair, nail clippings, for women, right? Menstrual items. As long as they are of natural fibers, I would bury and burn them. Burn them, bury them, incinerate them, right? Use fire to cleanse that. Just saying, just a side note, which is very specific, and it's not a lot of people are going to be up for that, but that's when you have very intimate items, you don't want to just give that energy away, right? Also, your male, I mean, that's kind of like very common knowledge. You don't want to put like things that have intimate knowledge, information, right? You want to make sure that you're burning those things, shredding those things, like destroying them so that other people don't have access to you, right? You've created this space, now you have to protect it. That's the masculine. So you have to, we all have masculine and feminine, same ingredients, different recipes, right? We have all the same modalities in our chart, all the elements in our chart, right? We all have these same ingredients, different recipes. So you're coming into this yin space, but you were not protected as a child, so you have to protect yourself, right? So that's masculine. You have to remother yourself by nurturing yourself, and then you have to refather yourself by protecting and providing for yourself. So it's constantly that battle, which can be very difficult as a single individual, right? Because that's what the divine union is for. So we can kind of slip in out of balance with that. If we slip in and out of balance with that, then we attract someone who's out of balance in their recipe as well, right? So you want to find somebody who has perfected their recipe, and you've perfected your recipe. So that's what you can control. That's what you can perfect. And it will constantly be changed and influenced. That's the thing about balance. That's the thing about unconditional space, is that it's unconditional, and conditions are about control. So you can't, if you're dealing with neuroses, if you're feeling with behavioral disorders, right, any kind of diagnoses, those are all fractures of the ego, right? Those are very self-serving, those are very low vibrational, because you're expecting the external to accommodate you, whereas you have to be accountable to accommodate the external, right? You have to accommodate the collective. And that doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your boundaries or lower your standards or overgive, right? And pour out of an empty cup. That just means that you have to balance yourself. You have to find the comfort in the discomfort. The discomfort's not going to become comfortable for you. And if you expect that, that keeps you in a victim mentality, that keeps you in victim mode, and we're victors here, right? So yeah, purging that stuff out. So we have the sight, smell, taste, touch. Oh, smells, I didn't cover smells, but yeah, making a clean space is the best smelling space, right? So what are your favorite smells, right? And purifying those. Also with touch and feel, what you're putting on your body, right? Hygiene products that you're using. If you want to purify them, pay attention to the deodorants that you're using, the shampoos, the conditioners, the cleaning supplies, everything that you're using in your space. Make sure that it's pure, make sure that it's natural, right? Tap into that earth energy, the natural energy, because when you're covering yourself up with perfumes and chemicals and things like that, we're attracted by pheromones. Also, pheromones are helpful to our immune system, right? And that's what we're talking about here. We're coming out in a balanced place is the immune system, right? The spiritual immune system. If you're empathic, you're always taking inventory of that, so that way you can keep yourself healthy, right? So yeah, medications, things like that. I can't say one way or another what you should be taking or not taking, but just pay attention to that, do an inventory of that, and only you will know what's serving you and what's not serving you. And if there's a way that you can holistically move whatever you're doing chemically into a holistic balanced state, right? Coming to an earth energy, like Virgo is very earth, very healing, right? The Virgo is a healer. And so this hermit is going into a place where you heal yourself. Yoga taps you into that. I feel like there's a lot of information here, a lot of things for Instagram. I'm not sure what the practical application of this reading is going to be, because there's a lot here. So I feel like I could choose anything, either in spellcraft, in like psychological, right? Making a list of things that you've already done is very helpful versus things that you need to do, like cutting yourself some slack, making it easy on yourself, not in a way that stunts your growth, but in a way that gives you grace. This Queen of Cups, this is filling your own cup, see how her cup is like runneth over? Making sure that your cup is full, filling yourself up, hydrating. All of these are pretty general as far as eat well, be well, clean up your space, clean your diet. What you're wearing. I don't think I covered all the 5 senses, but we'll see. There's the Queen of Swords and the Queen of Pentacles. It's coming out of that air energy into that earth energy. I'm sorry, Queen of Swords and the Nine of Pentacles. This is like the Queen of Pentacles or the Empress energy. Right underneath it is the Empress. Oh, I love tarot. This is the Empress energy. The Empress and the Emperor are the divine masculine and feminine union. So this is coming into the Empress energy, nurturing your space, ways to make your space. The Empress is also Taurus, and I was getting Taurus energy. I'm also a Taurus, but I really feel like your space, if you're trying to get out of your space because you're aggravated or because these shadows are coming out, then that means that you haven't actually created a space that you enjoy, and you're going to attract lower vibrations. So you need to make that space something that you enjoy, something that is a full cup. Because if you go in with a half full cup or an empty cup, trying to attract a divine counterpart, you're going to attract karmic partners, right? You're going to attract people from the past, from these past cycles. And that's going to be in friendships, it's going to be in lovers, that's going to be in work, that's going to be in, just shitty cashiers. If you go out and, you're just running errands, it's going to be everybody that you attract, that energy is going to be that invasive energy, and it's going to put you back into that contraction, which is like a tower, right? Those are like little towers, right? If you haven't done that work and you're going out in a space of lack, if you're going out in that 5 energy, then you're going to attract that stuff that validates you feeling lack, and they're gonna, well, that's why I didn't want to go out in public. That's why I didn't want to date again. I knew I wasn't. I knew they were no good. I knew I was no good. Whatever. And then you're gonna contract, right? That's what the tower does. It makes you contract. It forces you into hermit mode to reevaluate, re-inventory, and do that work. Okay, I think that's it. If you have any suggestions about or questions about anything that I mentioned, and you want me to further go into that, or for that to be the thing that I do on Instagram as the 90-second practical application reel, let me know. Instagram, same name. Otherwise, I hope there was something in here for you, and I wish you well.